And to delve more into this with us, joining us from Budapest is Ivan Us, who's an advisor at the Ukrainian National Center, and from Krasnodar, Sudki Osman, who is an expert in Russian affairs. Thank you very much, both of you, for being here with us. Mr. Us, I'll start with you. What is the significance of this upcoming meeting in Washington, where Macron and Starmer are going? How important is this, do you think?
Greetings to you, greetings to guests and all audience. So, of course, now we understand that paradigm of global policy seriously changed. So, if in time of Joe Biden administration, the United States of America say that they, of course, support Ukraine, but they don't want to be in deeper engagement in this war. They don't want to see their soldiers on the Ukrainian soil, and that's why they ask European partners do not do that, because I said that we will be with Europeans if Europeans want to be in Europe, but we don't want to do that. Now situation changed. Now Donald Trump said that yes, US will not be engaged in this war, but on the other hand, Donald Trump gave a direct hint that he could not stop European countries if they decided to do so. Furthermore, Donald Trump and his administration constantly repeat that Ukraine is first of all European problem, and European countries should be more engaged. That's why I think that meeting that will be in US between Emmanuel Macron and Keir Starmer from the United Kingdom, they will discuss the future format. So, as I understand, Europe needs this simple thing. First, that US will not be against European soldiers in Ukraine. Second, that US sent its weapon, not its soldiers, but at least its weapon, because European army needs US weapon. So I think that they will discuss that option, and how do they succeed in that, we will see after actually that meeting. Thank you.
And coming to you, Mr. Osman, what are the differences between the stances of France, the United Kingdom, and Donald Trump? What are the main points of disagreement, do you think, between the three leaders?
Good afternoon to you and to the dear guest. Of course, there is a lot of points of disagreement. I think that President Macron talked in 2024 about a desire to establish a military alliance which is rejected by the US. The US basically wants to reach a sustainable peace agreement with Russia. We have still other points of disagreements. The European states, for example, do not approve of annexing lands from Ukraine to Russia. Currently, there is no way to restore these Russian-occupied lands to Ukraine. The decision-making centers here in the U.S. Are bearing the responsibility when taking the initiative to solve the Ukrainian situation. During the Obama reign, the European Union alone bore that responsibility. In 2014, Russia took over the Crimea Peninsula. In the Normandy situation, we have seen the European failure to maintain an agreement or find a permanent solution to the Ukrainian current situation. The Biden process, which is the endless military support to Ukraine, also failed. This endless military support was unable to achieve the desired objectives. Now the US administration is not looking for a military operation or a military process, as they are looking at a political path and reaching a consensus and respecting the interests of President Putin. I think these are the main differences. we have seen that there has been a lot of visits between Macron and Scholz trying to reach a truce, and we are seeing different stances and positions now. A lot of conflict, and the US is seeking to stop such conflict, but the European statements so far are not very assuring, and I think the US is taking a very wise position, because prolonging this conflict more than this will lead to a war that will involve all the European continent. So there has to be an agreement between the European parties and the United States.
Okay, so Mr. Us, coming back to you, Mr. Osman saying there that the stance of France and Britain and Europe as a whole is not very encouraging. Trump, of course, decided to go solo and decided US-Russia talks would begin. That was in Saudi Arabia earlier last week, and so that happened. You got the U.S. and Russia talks. Kyiv weren't there. Ukraine wasn't there. Wider Europe wasn't there either. What did you make of Macron's decision to start a European meeting this week and have the leaders meet on this issue?
I agree with Mr. Osman that really Europe is not ready for full support of Ukraine, but at least Emmanuel Macron, he tried to at least start forming the position of Ukrainian support, because you know that such a feeling we have now that old coalition destroyed and ruined and new coalition could be created. So I think that when Russia and US have a meeting in Saudi Arabia, in the same moment President Zelensky, who so expected to be in Saudi Arabia in that day, decided to change its agenda, and he moved to Turkey for meeting with President Erdogan. And as for me, it's a sign that if the United States of America will not be engaged in the process of supporting Ukraine, or will constantly say that Ukraine should sacrifice by their territory and forgot about damage committed by Russia, so it means not the end of the story. It means that Ukraine should build more constructive relationship with Europe and with Turkey, because European Union and the United Kingdom as a European country, as Turkey, it's a country that's situated in the region. We know that Black Sea, it's a sea between Russia and actually Turkey, and that's why Turkey, of course, deeply watching for the situation there. So, and I think that now all those attempts of Emmanuel Macron to organize those summits, it's first of all reminding that Europe is not disappear. Europe exists, and Europe, of course, has its interests. And European countries, especially those European countries that are situated not far away from Russia, and who are expected that after Ukraine, the Russia attack them, because Russia want to regain Soviet Union, and that means that at least 3 European Union countries situated in Baltic region should be under Russian control. So it means that Europe, of course, should respond to those threats from Russia, as Europe, of course, want to be ready for some attack from Trump. I mean, his statement about Greenland. So it's, as I said before, new configuration, and Europe, of course, want to show that they so should be present near the table of those negotiations, and of course make an influence on final decision. And another sign that if US will not so support Ukraine, European Union plus UK plus Turkey, it will be countries that help Ukraine, and quite possible that we should add it to another important economies in this world. I mean, Japan and South Korea. Those countries actually can be with Ukraine and theoretically can substitute US in the support. Of course, Canada so will be in this team. So now we will see a attempt of Europe to be more important in the global policy, and those Emmanuel Macron steps, as for me, in direction of increasing of European Union value in this world. Thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Osman, do you think that there is a role or could be a collaboration between the United States and Europe in trying to end the conflict? And how worried should we be if the United States decide to go it alone and they have behind doors meetings with Russia and could possibly end up carving up Ukraine without anybody else having a say in it?
بالبداية يجب أن ننوه إلى فكرة ما معينة تم استعجال من جميع الأطراف من قبل الطرف
All
الأوكراني
parties
قبل الطرف
worked
الأوروبي
with
بما يسمى
Ukraine
السلام
and
قبل
Europe during the Riyadh summit, and we thought that this summit would actually result in solving the situation. Only Europe and Ukraine came together to solve the Russian situation without inviting Russia. They talked about the Ukrainian file, for example, the diplomatic representation and economic cooperation and different other issues reaching the Ukrainian file. What happened in Riyadh does not mean that there will be no consensus without Ukrainian representation. One way or another, Ukraine has always been a part of the negotiation. So we should not be rush what happens in this file. In a few weeks there will be a meeting between Trump and Putin, and I think that meeting will be the roadmap or could be the roadmap to end what's happening in Ukraine. I think Ukraine will always be in the negotiations, and President Trump that said that he has no problem to meet Zelensky now. A few months he said that he wouldn't meet him, but there has been a change and the Russian stance changed, and the US president expressed his readiness to meet Zelensky and taking the European Union as a part of the negotiation. Of course, the United States, through the next meetings with Macron and the European delegations, they will take care of the European interests as well, because eventually the European Union and the European states cannot prevent endless support to Ukraine, and especially after the US withdrew from the NATO and the sanctions imposed by the US, and therefore the agreement and the roadmap to be set now by Trump is handling the finalizing the situation permanently. So Europe must be part of the negotiation, and cancelling the sanctions will have a bearing which will be in everyone's interest. The European Union first to have the natural flow of Russian oil and money, so reaching a consensus and agreement between all parties, including the European Union, would be highly beneficial. Of course, there are security concerns in terms of military alliances. But if we reach a consensus on a peace agreement, I think this will serve the best interests of all parties, and I think this will Europe will discuss with the United States to serve the trade exchange and economic interests of all parties.
So coming back to you, Mr. Us, Mr. Osman, they're saying that, you know, cancelling sanctions against Russia would be beneficial for everybody. That's part of the peace talks. What do you make of that? And also, how unified is Europe when it comes to Macron and Starmer's visit that they're going to be having in Washington? Is everybody on the same page, or are there some parties in Europe who are leaning more towards Trump's point of view?
Of course, in Europe, there are different countries supporting Trump. First of all, Hungary, where I'm now situating. The Prime Minister of Hungary, Orban, he constantly repeats the fact that Europe, in their sanction policy versus Russia, should copy actually the United States of America and Trump administration. But probably Slovakia in this team, quite possible several countries in EU, but not all, because everyone understands that the main pressure that Western world have on Russia, it's economy. Economic sanctions lead to situations that, for example, in this year, Russia received deficit of their budget after first month at the level higher than they expected to receive it after the end of this year. It means that Russia has a lot of economic problems, and as Western partners are not ready to send their army and to help to Ukraine to win battle. As actually former Deputy Prime Minister of Canada, Chrystia Freeland, said, that it's the third time in the world history when we clearly define where the good and where the evil. She said about civil war in US, then Sky of Britain's means Second World War, and so she said it's Kiev because it was 3 years ago in February 2022 when Russia started full-scale invasion. That's why now, if we actually live in this vision, we should understand that our partners are not ready to send weapon. Sorry, they are sending weapon, but not sending their soldiers, their army. But they at least have an economic level of influence. And sanctions, preserving of sanctions, it's preserving of that economic influence. Because Soviet Union, no one attacks. Let's be frank. Soviet Union disappeared from the world map because economy was not ready for challenges that happened due to sanction policy and due to decreased oil prices. The same situation could be now. And we hear a statement of Donald Trump that probably they could eliminate some sanctions. But in that case, I have one question. So Donald Trump wants to sell more gas and oil to Europe. But if he eliminates sanctions versus Russia, it means that Europe will purchase this oil not from Trump, but from Putin. It means he creates competitor to himself. That's why I think that sanctions should be, economic pressure should be, and economic pressure could give result that could be achieved with appearances of a large quantity of soldiers and, of course, death of a lot of soldiers from Europe and US that both Europe and US don't need it. And as they don't need it, I think that they should preserve sanctions. And that is a very effective level of influence. And when Russia made statements that sanctions is not working, when I saw this deficit of budget, when I see the policy of Central Bank of Russia, and when I see one for another problem that appearance with high periodically, I think that really it's a good result of sanctions. That's why I think that a task now for European partners to explain to Donald Trump that sanctions should be, and the European countries so should be engaged in the process of those sanctions, or we should understand that if sanctions will be eliminated and give pluses to Russia, Russia can rebuild its economy, win the war versus Ukraine, and then go with a war to Europe. Europe understands that. That's why I think that they will find argument to Trump why the sanctions should still be on the table. Thank you.
And Mr. Osman, Donald Trump has been very critical, very rude about Volodymyr Zelensky over the past few days. He called Zelensky a dictator. He said that Ukraine started the war as well. How do you view the US's approach to diplomacy when it comes to the broader peace agreement, diplomatic negotiations?
United States stance, as we have discussed, is very clear. The election campaign statements by Trump were very clear regarding this war. Of course, we're all aware the parties in Trump administration do not want to make enemies with Russia. They talking through economic sanctions. But they do not want any military path with Russia, because it would only lead to war in Europe, and it will not lead to the end of Russia. It will only lead to a war in the entire world. The war during the Soviet War actually was exhausting to the economy worldwide, not only in Russia. So now it was an internal destruction process waged on Russia before. And I think Trump is well aware of that, the US administration is aware of that, and they are aware of risks that Europeans are ignoring. European is now not the enemy of Europe. The enemy here is the bigger risk is the Chinese economy growing, and now Russia the US is leaving Russia and the Russian economy, which is a great power, to Ukraine, which is very concerning to the US. Trump is now aware that the sanctions on Russia are beneficial to China, and Russia is completely directed to the Chinese growth, which is something Trump does not want. Even the European economies are going into recession because of the Chinese economy growth. They do not want, and Trump specifically do not want China to be the leader of the world economically in 20 years. That's why he's working in this direction to make better relations with China.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to interrupt you there just because we're just out of time. But thank you very much, both of you, for joining us. It was a fascinating discussion. That was Sulki Osman, who is a Russian affairs expert, and also Ivan Us, an advisor at the Ukraine National Center. Thank you, both of you, for joining us here on Q News.